Anti-Hollywood films are nothing new in exposing the dark underbelly of it. Many are cases of melodrama that show the destruction of the Hollywood dream. One that comes to mind is Showgirls, which I believe to not only be a masterpiece, but a film ahead of its time. I then saw this film that may be a rare case of someone being exposed to the true side of Hollywood, made an anti-Hollywood film, and then left the industry altogether. The director, Christina Hornisher, made a handful of radical short student films. Years later, she set off to make the film Hollywood 928. These were all the films that she has made. It makes for an interesting type of film, as this is the usual exploitation film from the 70s, especially one about a serial killer, but is done through an entirely different lens. It's a man who works in the adult film industry and then takes it out by killing women. However, especially with this being made by someone with a degree in film studies, the amount of detail that goes into this is superb and has a fantastic use of power dynamics, technical aspects, and symbolism to make a very engaging film about the toxicity of Hollywood. First, there is Marx's control of women, then there is a director's Jobal control of him, and finally there is Hollywood itself controlling the city and the Hollywood dream. This shows it right at the beginning with a sort of opening credits montage. The lead Mark picks up a woman and goes to her place. It ends with the camera zooming in on movie lights, and the transfer to the next scene is both of them entering a door. It gives off a feeling that they're sort of entering a film set. I realized this upon a second viewing, but it's basically the same job as him doing his adult film loops. She gets naked, yet he never does. He feels her up, and of course, the focus is solely on her. Then he does kill her, in a sense of showing him exploiting her. It does make more sense later on in the film, but the fact that you can pick up on details like this shows how well written it is. Then there is the first adult video loop video shoot, and it shows the director, Joe Ball, of these films. He is very overpowering with his build, which is an obvious way of showing power dynamics. However, of course, someone like him would be considered the embodiment of counterculture, yet he still dresses like a stereotype of the era. He has all that brown clothing, that certain style of glasses, and a huge afro. This does show that on top of this, he was just doing the standard trend of adult filmmaking during this era as well. This was the start of the golden age of adult films. There are films such as Deep Throat, Behind the Green Door, and The Devil and Miss Jones that were made right before this. This was specifically called porno chic. There were even mainstream films coming out during then, such as The Last Tango in Paris. Of course, those all had a horror film aspect to it when you figure out what happened during the recording of them, and it shows it well here. During the first video loop, the adult star Carol comes in from the staircase with a camera doing an upskirt sort of shot, and a director simply gawking at her. In a sense, it shows that she has the power in the industry, as in the adult film industry they are powerful by the sense of their physical attraction. During the shoot, the power dynamics change with the director. Now he is at the top of the staircase, shouting his commands. He even makes himself a spectator. He's wearing glasses and is still wearing binoculars to get a better view of her and her body. Despite the people gawking at her before, now she is practically at their mercy. Mark even has some semblance of control of this by recording her and by having him placed above her. Both are exploited by Jobal. Firstly, there is no control in Carol's performance, no dialogue, and only moaning when asked. She simply has no agency. During this, Jobal then controls Mark, telling him where to place the camera. Each person had their place beforehand, but at the end, the power dynamic changed to the opposite. Jobal to Mark to Carol. This is what shows the film's changes to power dynamics, and from now on, it'll be structured based on the hierarchy of exploitation from the top to the bottom. The parts of Hollywood taken over are usually shown through city symphonies. The first one has Mark at the zoo, feeling compelled by nature and taking tons of photographs. That is what gives him a sense of control and what is closer to the Hollywood dream that he always wanted. The problem is that the gentrification and even exploitative aspects are still there. These are animals held captive and is a sort of artificial type of nature as is being restricted around these buildings and the cages of a zoo. It's a good example of showing that the nature of the city is being taken over. Another symphony segment is simply showing Mark walking on the mural of the 928 zip code. First, there is a mural on the wall with the street names of that zip code, and he looks very small as he's walking through it. It gives off that little fish in the ocean vibe. The next shot then has an art piece of a bug taking pollen from a flower. His head is resting directly on the flower petals. It's a very direct way of showing how exploited he is. At the end of the various shots, there is a mural of a woman. He ignores it and walks right past it. It then zooms in on her face and transitions to him holding gadgets preparing for the next video shoot. He could try to ignore it all he wants, but he's a part of that industry. We will explore it later, but during that second photo shoot, he meets a new model named Michelle. He takes her out on a sort of date by showing her Bunker Hill and the many buildings that are still there, slowly being taken down through gentrification. He simply said that they will be replaced with fancy apartment buildings. Hollywood is an exploitative industry and is literally taking over the city itself by tearing down everything in its path. Mark then uses his charm to try to get her into the industry using his control. What better place to take her than to the actual Hollywood sign? It's the apex of him trying to control her with what dreams he may offer her. During this, she does give a monologue that you hear all the time. A girl from a small town with big dreams of going into Hollywood, leaving everything and everyone and starting from scratch. It brilliantly goes back and forth between the different eras of footage of Hollywood as well, showing that the dreams happen at any time throughout history. She then explains what happened to her career afterwards with the inevitable adult film, with very gloomy colors and a very depressed look on her face. In terms of Mark being exploited, there is a very simple yet effective scene showing him having a few disagreements with Jobel. It's stuff that he may not agree with, like letting him borrow the camera for a day, or him having a better room to do work, but it once again shows the power dynamics between the director and his employee. Another cynical scene that shows up afterwards is him trying to get another job. He shows his educational background, and the employer is impressed. The problem is that his portfolio is only adult films, so of course he's forever stuck in that exploitive film industry because no one with more mainstream stuff will want to hire someone with his background. He got trapped by Hollywood to be reduced to this, and now he can never get out. The fact that he couldn't even admit what his content was said enough. Another city symphony segment is in the red light district that shows both senses of power dynamics on his end. It shows a bunch of strip clubs and adult stores. He enters a joint with some magazines and he runs his hands through an aisle of them, reaching towards his next step of exploitation. He wants to take control of it. He then finds Michelle in one of those video shoots that he rents. She has a black cat as the innuendo, and the film breaks out before we actually see any nudity. Despite him wanting to have control over her throughout the film, this shows that in the end, the product itself has that control. He ended up gawking at her and couldn't do anything. Because of all this, he ends up becoming the exploiter himself. He needs some sense of power in that industry. This is when he goes for the stars. The second video shoot was the most explicit in terms of power dynamics. Michelle is the new girl in it and is literally a BDSM session. You can tell she was at the full mercy of them and didn't want a part of it. The most interesting shot was while the veteran of the industry was going through a simulated sexual assault scene. Mark instead points the camera towards Michelle, who just stares at the camera with a depressed and concerned face. By looking at the camera, she is seeing the industry head on and how exploitative it is, and that you too, as an audience member, will realize it. She then takes him to her house for some coffee. He seems really charming at first. It shows all of this and it almost turns into a romantic film. Considering its themes, it makes you wonder if he's the draw that inspiring actress gets from the Hollywood system. The charm of it at the beginning, and then the total destruction. He says the usual lines like, "You're different and that's all that matters," which is almost identical to the "I'm gonna make you a star" line. This goes for the opposite order if you take the usual plot line of this. However, the BDSM scene and the Bunker Hill scene are seen through a more macro level. There was still no exploitation done by the middleman Mark, so the usual charm to exploitation system has to come to him from scratch. During the date, she isn't fully into his charms and is just a kiss. This then shows the exploitation nature of Hollywood as being more of an urge. He must keep that machine going, so he aims for someone easy to be his next victim. He then has a sort of artistic vision to try to make something by taking strips of film onto a projector and making his own patterns of it. With the kill of the easy target, he exploited her, and now he has his artwork. Michelle then dumps him, and his charms trying to exploit her into the industry have fallen through. Instead, she goes for someone else who belongs in an industry that is less toxic, one who is his own musician. This is where things get interesting, as he gives himself into the industry to an extent. He rushes into her place to be with her, only this time he's also in the nude. There's a sort of mirror effect that makes it seem like it's a reel of film showing the action. This shows that he has lost control of whatever he had in this industry, whether it being at the same level as her, or perhaps even being below. Because of her message, it means that she has left those charms and that she's not in that industry anymore and cannot be exploited. In most films, this would come across as the happily ever after sort of message, but is different here. There's a montage of her in several photographs, with a monologue of Mark saying how much he depends on her in the relationship and how much he needs her. It does imply that they'll be together forever, but the next scene shows what he actually means. He wasn't able to be with her until after she left the industry. That means that even if there's the aspect like him falling for his charms, she cannot be exploited. She won't be a victim like the previous two women were. This is shown in the final scene, which I think is one of the greatest final shots in all of cinema. He's at the Hollywood sign, has a camera pointed towards him, and he hangs himself. The camera, being on a helicopter, then flies away. The thought will always linger of you seeing that the Hollywood dream is dead for someone, but as it zooms out, you cannot see his body anymore. Like the mural, he was a small fish in the ocean, and he'll simply be forgotten about. This may be too much of a film study sort of analysis for a film like this, but let's face it, if she's a film studies graduate, she of course would throw in a lot of aspects like this. It does make me sad to hear that this is her only feature length film, but looking at this content, it was clear that this was meant to be her middle finger film to Hollywood. Are there any other anti Hollywood films that you can think of? Mention any that you can think of in the comments. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.